I give that a lot of credibility. It ties in with what President Biden said last night when he was interviewed about it. It seems more likely that it is a Ukrainian S-300 that was attempting to intercept a massive barrage of Russian missiles.
Yeah. It shows one, though, that how easy it is to potentially draw another nation into this ongoing conflict.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a huge barrage of Russian missiles. As the reporter said before, approximately 90 missiles were launched. A big escalation, the largest single-day launch that the Russians have done, a huge escalation. And whenever you do something like that, you run the risk of mistakes, of errors. Either one of your own missiles goes off course, or as in this case, it appears an intercept goes off course and goes into another country. It's always a risk when you escalate.
Yeah. When something like this happens into Poland, which is a NATO country, how critical is it to be very clear on what happened and to really try and de-escalate any sort of tension?
Well, I think here the Polish government have done a great job of not speculating wildly about what it was. All the other NATO allies expressing support for Poland in whatever Poland decides they need to do next, immediately going to NATO to have consultations. But we need to remain cool. We need to assess the facts before we start recommending options for a response.
Yeah. Russia immediately denied any responsibility, but they do that on many, many occasions, no matter, what happens. They have, though, said it was a deliberate provocation. How much of a concern might that be if they feel this is a way to escalate the forces that are working with Ukraine against Russia?
Well, I think the large missile attack that Russia unleashed was meant to get the attention of the G20. In the middle of this accident occurred, and I'm sure there were parts of the Russian military that were afraid that this could have been one of theirs. They have had a number of misfires throughout this conflict. So I do think they immediately wanted to try to distance themselves from any blame. But as you point out, just like with MH17, they lie all the time. And so their attempt to shift blame is just, it's never credible. And I do think they want to try to make sure that in this case, all the blame goes on to everyone else other than them, even though we should be focusing on the fact that they launched 90 missiles to kill civilians and destroy infrastructure and make the Ukrainian people suffer. And that's a horrible thing.
And they are making the Ukrainian people suffer at a time when they are losing so much ground.
Right. That's one of the reasons the Russians unleashed this barrage of missiles, is to distract from the fact that they are losing ground. The loss of territory around Kherson, this is a huge deal for Ukraine, a massive victory, a huge humiliation for the Russians. And so the Russians want to increase the violence against civilians in the hope of coercing Ukraine into negotiations. And they did this during the G20 to try to make Western countries push Ukraine into negotiations, when really Ukraine needs to continue to press their advantage on the battlefield.
William, I'm interested in your thoughts about the US, who are really in some ways, though, trying to get Ukraine to consider some form of negotiation at this particular point. Do you think that would be a wise move?
I don't think it's a wise move to tell the Ukrainians that they should leave their people under Russian control. I mean, as every territory that's been liberated, we've heard horrible stories of what's been happening to these people. And I really do think the battlefield has changed substantially in Ukraine's favor. I think it would just be wrong to tell them that they need to negotiate away their own people. I think they need to continue to push the Russians so that the Russians diminish their demands. That's what's happened throughout this conflict so far, and get to a point where they can liberate as much of their territory as humanly possible.
Yeah, and you're not concerned that the West's support for Ukraine will diminish as the months drag on?
I don't think so. We really haven't seen it. And right at the time when we're hearing reports that some in the administration might want negotiations from Russia and Ukraine, at that same time, the largest package of U.S. assistance, $37.3 billion, has been proposed. So I do think we're seeing continued support from across Europe, from the United States, from across the world, and I think it's only going to continue.
Great to talk, as always, William. Thank you so much.
Thank you.